Good morning and welcome to Morning Movie News, which today is brought to you by a special message to wear your coat when you go outside, even if you think you don't want one, because then you'll end up sick like myself. But that doesn't stop Morning Movie News, where we have 3 interesting stories to discuss today. But first, in lieu of a viewer question, I want to discuss a new show that debuted yesterday on Beyond the Trailer, and that's BTT Voice. The first episode was about Big Hero 6, and what BTT Voice is about is you guys presenting your own thoughts on big upcoming films. It's a way, as I said in that inaugural episode, to get the audience voice back on Beyond the Trailer, but in a way that everyone can participate. You don't just have to be in New York City. This way, everyone, not only in the United States, but across the globe, can contribute to the conversation. Because I love the fact that Beyond the Trailer has a global audience. So I'm very excited about this. I was very happy with the way the first episode turned out about, again, Big Hero 6. And I love the fact that in the comments section, a number of people wrote, hey, you know, I wasn't sure if I wanted to submit to this beforehand, but now that I've seen it, I definitely want to submit on the next one. Well, that's excellent. And now you can submit for the next one because the submission period is open. And it will be open through Monday, October 20th, this upcoming Monday at midnight. And the reason I'm doing that is to give you a weekend because I know that's the easiest time to film a video. So this is how you submit. And what's the movie? The movie is Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. And I know there's plenty to say about that. So first of all, you film a video about yourself, of yourself talking about Batman v Superman and what you're excited about or not excited about with the film. Just basically anything that you want to say about this upcoming film. And keep it to 30 seconds in length. Please don't go over 30 seconds. If you submit more than 30 seconds, I'm afraid I'm going to have to instruct the editor on these, Clayton, not to watch more than the first 30 seconds of each video because it's just not fair to Clayton. He has so many entries to go through. It's too much to ask of him. Also, I wanted to point out that somebody said, well, you didn't use everything that I submitted about Big Hero 6. And I'm just telling you that's not personal. It's just we take what makes for the best episode. So just because one of your arguments or your comments didn't make it into the final cut doesn't mean there was anything wrong with it. It just didn't fit into the momentum of the episode or, you know, what was put together. So just keep that in mind. Make your video 30 seconds in length, then upload it to YouTube as an unlisted video and send that link to me at grace@gracerandolph.com. Now don't send me an MOV file or an MP4 file or any kind of file because I'm not going to download it. It's too risky to my computer that I could get a virus. So again, it has to be an unlisted YouTube link. So send that to me again by the end of the day on Monday, October 20th, and then you will definitely see a part of what you've presented in the final episode. So it's very exciting. I can't wait for the second episode, and if you haven't checked out that first episode for Big Hero 6, I hope you'll go and do it now. I'll put a link at the end of this video. So I'm very excited about this new series, and I hope that you are as well. So let's move on to today's 3 stories. So again, I apologize, I'm a little sick, and also there's that stupid construction outside, but we're going to forge ahead. All right, so the first story broke late last night, and it made me so happy because I love Ewan McGregor so much. And this is the news that he is being considered by Marvel for Doctor Strange. I think this is one of the best ideas Marvel has ever had, and I would be, basically, if I had anyone I could call up at Marvel or tweet or text, I would say, make it happen, make it so, because this is who I want as Doctor Strange. Now, the whole Doctor Strange situation is very interesting, because clearly they have a bit of a problem with this movie. Joaquin Phoenix was, very long in talks for it, from Comic-Con all the way to just recently when they announced that he dropped out, right around before Inherent Vice debuted at the New York Film Festival. And the way the story broke, it really made it seem like Joaquin Phoenix walked away. Now, who knows what actually happened, but, you think Marvel would be a little more careful with how these stories get spun, especially after what happened with Edgar Wright. And then when that story broke about Joaquin Phoenix, I said that I thought that, the director of Sinister was a bit of a problem for the movie. And then when you think about it, the writer is a writer from Prometheus. He's not even the famous writer on Prometheus, Damon Lindelof. It's the other guy. So you have 2 talented people here, or the 2 talents behind the camera who I'm sure are somewhat talented, and maybe they just haven't gotten a chance to shine yet. But so far, they haven't done a lot of shining. So I can see why, while there should be a lot of faith in Marvel at this point, certain talent would be concerned and say, you know what, I think you had lightning in a bottle with James Gunn, but I think it would be foolish for me to assume lightning would strike twice. twice with Scott Derrickson and this other writer, I believe John Spates is how you pronounce his name. But so finding an actor is proving to be difficult for Marvel, who's willing to work with these two individuals. Now, Ewan McGregor, as we all know, he's willing to experiment. He's made some not-so-great films, but of course he's made some wonderful films. But I think in every movie Ewan McGregor has ever been in, he has been a wonderful part of it. He's a very talented actor. Now, I think the most obvious thing that people might say is, well, he's a redhead. He doesn't have Doctor Strange's coloring. And for instance, in some of the stories, some of the places I saw this story picked up, they pointed to places where he dyed his hair black. And they were like, is this Doctor Strange? And I was like, I hope it isn't, because I don't want to see Doctor Strange with black hair. I think there's very big danger with this character of turning him into a hippie, Tony Stark. I want to see this character seem very different than Tony Stark. Stephen Strange needs to just not only thematically, in terms of his snark, because he starts out kind of a snarky character as a surgeon, but he needs to, I think, have a different look. I think that considering the goatee that's so famous for Tony Stark, I don't want to see that over on Doctor Strange. So I really want to see Ewan McGregor, I think, keep his natural coloring, because I think it'll create a really great different look for the character. Now, what else I like about Ewan McGregor is he has a childlike wonder to himself as an actor, which I think would be a great thing to see in Doctor Strange. Instead of a cynicism or, a maturity that, again, I feel will mimic Tony Stark. I think to have a Ewan McGregor type, character like that would be really wonderful. But Ewan McGregor, of course, is a wonderful actor who can still show the edge and the challenging origin story that Doctor Strange is famous for. Now, I know Kevin Feige said no more origin stories, but it's got to be referenced somewhat at all that he lost and why he went to become a Sorcerer Supreme in the first place. So Ewan McGregor can do all of that, and I think present a really different, again, a different kind of character than Tony Stark. But at the same time, I like that he keeps things balanced in terms of the age demographics in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. You've got your Chris Evans, your Chris Hemsworth, your Scarlett Johansson, they're all over in that category. Your Tom Hiddleston. But then I like the fact that you have not just Robert Downey Jr., but Mark Ruffalo, Paul Rudd now, and then Ewan McGregor. He totally fits in with that group of guys. And as I've said before, also, Aaron Taylor-Johnson and Elizabeth Olsen are in that younger group. I would love to see an older actress join who is also at the same level of Downey, Ruffalo, Rudd, and now hopefully McGregor. I think that it's important to maintain that duality. And also Samuel L. Jackson is there as well. I think it's great. And I just think that Ewan McGregor is a wonderful actor who's not overexposed at the moment, and he's an interesting out-of-the-box choice. I think that Tom Hardy and Benedict Cumberbatch are obvious choices, and they are both a little overexposed. We'll see if Benedict Cumberbatch can turn things around with The Imitation Game, but right now, I don't really think he's a great choice for this. I'd also like to point out that Ewan McGregor, based on that vote for Obi-Wan, and that a lot of audiences want to see an Obi-Wan movie, points to just how popular he is thanks to those prequels. So I think that there is an audience for him who wants to see him of all ages, which is also a good thing for him. And the other thing about Star Wars to take away is that Ewan McGregor was a real gentleman about those prequels. Natalie Portman was like, it's impossible to act opposite, all that green screen stuff, and really tried to defend her poor performance, quite frankly, in those movies. And Liam Neeson never talks about it, but Ewan McGregor has always embraced it. He's embraced them for what they are. He's always been, very favorable and open to talk about it, says he'd love to return, and I think that just shows what kind of a franchise player he is, which is exactly what Marvel needs. So I think Ewan McGregor couldn't be a better choice. I love him for this role, and I would like to see this happen. So I'm curious to what you guys think, or are you sticklers for the traditional Doctor Strange look? And what do you think of my feeling that we don't want him to be too much like Tony, right? All right, so that's the first story of the day. Now let's move over to another redhead, Matt Murdock. Now this was a big story on the weekend over at New York Comic Con. They really gave us our first look at the Marvel Netflix deal. And this was somewhat discussed, but of course pushed off of all the headlines by the Robert Downey Jr. Captain America 3 news. But let's discuss it today. So once again, they showed some clips at a convention that they didn't release to the public. Of course, I'm talking about Marvel, and this is becoming a little bit of a habit with them. They showed apparently 2 clips from Daredevil that they have not released in general beyond the convention, just like they didn't show that Avengers footage, Avengers Age of Ultron footage that they played at San Diego Comic-Con. And that footage aired again at New York Comic-Con for retailers. So again, people are seeing Avengers Age of Ultron footage, but they're really keeping it, on a must-see basis. And I still think that's a mistake on Marvel's part, or I think they should release maybe some stills, some more stuff. I feel that they should be sensitive to the fact that a lot of people can't afford to travel to these conventions, the bulk of their fans, in fact, and they shouldn't penalize them for that. They can wait a few days like everybody else, but I think the footage should eventually be released. Tomorrowland released their footage, and so did Big Hero 6. More Disney properties, just as, of course, the Marvel properties are. They're under the Disney umbrella, but Marvel's not playing that game. So anyway, we can't talk about the clips because we haven't seen them, but we can talk about this costume, the first picture they showed, that a lot of people have taken issue with. And a lot of people on the internet, I think, correctly pointed out that it's a shame that this is the only image they portrayed, because the Netflix Marvel team has admitted that this isn't the final costume. They're like, okay, this is how it's going to end up later. Later on he's going to get the traditional costume. This is his starter costume. But with nothing else to look at, all we can think is this what I'm going to look at for at least a few episodes on the series? And, I think Daredevil's supposed to, I'm sure he won't run around wearing this in the Defenders, but he could be in this costume for most of his own individual standalone series. I know it's based on some art that someone dug up from an old Daredevil comic, but I think it's hideous. I think it's really unattractive, and I think it looks really low budget. And I'm really surprised that Netflix and Marvel would go this route, because I think that one of the great things about Netflix is all the money they can pour into a property. And I think people have been looking at it, and cable programming in general, as something that's closer to movies than network. But here you have a costume which looks, I don't even think a network show would be happy with this costume. I just think it looks really bad. I understand that it emphasizes the fact that he's blind, but you have to remember that Daredevil's supposed to be trying, at least in the beginning of his vigilante career, throwing people off to the fact that he's blind. If he has no pretend eye holes or, visor to make people think that he can see, they're going to know we should look for a blind guy because that guy's eyes are totally covered. So maybe this is something he'll discover during the show, but I just think it's also just not an attractive costume. I mean, it really looks homemade to the point where you're like, Daredevil, I don't think you really made much of an effort here. It looks like a blind guy made that costume. And as we all know, Daredevil isn't totally blind because of his enhanced senses. He can kind of see with like radar vision. So I have no idea why this looks so bad. It looks really bad. And I'm also just surprised in general with, I think, the poor debut that the Marvel Netflix programming made at New York Comic Con. It didn't make a big splash. You're not seeing a lot of coverage for it, besides people saying this looks like crap, and I think that's really surprising. I thought that this Marvel Netflix deal was going to be a really big deal and change the way we saw comic book properties on the small screen. But so far, I don't think that's the case at all. All right, so that's the second story. Now, the third story, a number of people tweeted me about this. It's a great story, and it's about the evolving love affair between Hollywood and China, and also the importance of theme parks. As you might recall, a couple of episodes ago, about maybe a couple months at this point, someone said, are theme parks really that big an important business to Hollywood? And I answered yes. And you can see from the story we're going to discuss now that they are a tremendous source of revenue for Hollywood, and they're a tremendous source of economic growth for the places that they pop up. So China is getting a lot of theme parks because they have so many people in China. There's so much money to be made in China because not only can these people buy movie tickets, but these literally hundreds of millions of people can also buy a theme park ticket. Now, of course, the first to open will be Shanghai Disneyland in late 2015. I'm very excited about Shanghai Disneyland because it has the biggest castle ever in a Disney theme park. It'll be the biggest castle and the most interactive. It's going to represent all the Disney princesses, and it's just absolutely stunning if you see the schematics for this online. Then DreamWorks Animation, of course, who knows what will eventually happen to this company considering the problems it's having finding a buyer. It wants to go private, but nobody will take it private because it's having such a bad time with the stock market. But DreamWorks Animation has an entertainment complex that they're also opening in Shanghai in 2016, which will also feature, I believe, their animation facilities out in China. So Disney and DreamWorks are already in China. And so, they're both spending billions of dollars on those parks. I think $4 billion for Shanghai Disneyland and around $3 billion for the DreamWorks Animation Complex. And now Universal's getting in there with their own park, which is set to open unofficially in around 2019. That's the rumor right now. There's no official date for it to open. But they're going to bring, obviously, Harry Potter to Beijing. That's where their park will open, where the other two, again, are in Shanghai. But it's very interesting to see Universal going there. Universal is a very strong contender in the theme park business because of their Harry Potter world, and they're going to bring a number of Western brands to Asia. Now, what I think is really interesting here, one of my favorite aspects of the story, and then I have something else I want to say about it, is that Steven Spielberg has agreed to also advise this Universal theme park in Beijing. And all the Universal theme parks are advised by Steven Spielberg. He gets, and this was a story back in 2009, so imagine what he's making today. But back in 2009, it was reported that Steven Spielberg, thanks to his Universal deal, gets $30 million a year alone just from his advisor, being an advisor on the Universal theme parks. That's amazing. That just shows the kind of business Hollywood is and how valued Steven Spielberg's input is at this point, which I think is, I mean, it's interesting because a lot of his properties are at Universal, Transformers, Jurassic Park, obviously, E.T., but that's not included in the payment. They're not paying for the rights to that. He's just getting paid to say, you know what, maybe you should put a restaurant here, or maybe this ride should look like this, or maybe it would be cool if you added this. He just goes through and makes suggestions, and for that, $30 million a year back in 2009. And he's going to get even a bigger paycheck now because he's going to advise this Universal Beijing park. And I'm sure head to all the publicity events and be like, I'm Steven Spielberg, I love this park, I put my stamp of approval on it, and you should come and see it. Now, what else did I want to say about this? Besides, you're awfully lucky if you live, well, I guess you can debate if you're lucky if you live in China. Very sad stories we're hearing about coming out of Hong Kong and their problems with their elections. But you're going to have a good time at a theme park, at least, I guess you could say, which speaks to, I think, the gray area of Hollywood dealing so closely with China, which some of you have actually pointed to in the past. So we'll see how that progresses. But I would say, though, that just from the idea of the theme park, as a theme park fan, I'm a huge theme park fan. I would say that I think it's wonderful to see theme parks become a global business and for everyone to get to experience the joys of going to a theme park. I was quite surprised when I talked about the Tomorrowland teaser trailer and how they were clearly trying to rebrand the Tomorrowland areas of their theme parks over at Disney. I was surprised to see a number of people say I've never ever been to Disneyland, and not only have I never been, but I'm not even familiar with Disneyland. And I thought that was pretty interesting. And so I think clearly this kind of outreach program is going to change that. Hopefully, and that's obviously Disney's goal. But I would like to remind these companies, Disney and Universal, and DreamWorks, who doesn't even have a U.S. facility, that here in the U.S., we're the ones who popularized this form of entertainment. So, while again, I'm happy to see everybody else be able to share in the excitement, I see a lot of the new ideas and technology going only to the foreign theme parks. And I would really love to see some of that come here to the United States. I'd say share the love. Don't make those of us feel, just like you don't want to make anyone in China feel they have to travel all the way to the United States to go to Disneyland, don't make me feel I have to travel all the way to Shanghai to go to see this amazing castle that you're building out there, which is the biggest, most impressive castle you've ever built. I would just like to see a little more innovation across all the theme parks instead of them pouring all their money and attention into the new ones. That's just my little personal complaint being a theme park fan. All right, so that's today's morning movie news. Hopefully I'll feel better tomorrow, but there'll still be plenty of episodes coming out today. I hope you'll check them out. Thank you so much, and I look forward to your submissions for Batman v Superman. Thanks for watching. Bye.